Dang, I've been cracking my head so long trying to conclude who the Galaxy S25 was for. Traditionally, it's always been easy for me to recommend the Galaxy S series for people who are looking for a very good, competent generalist phone with one of the best Android UI interfaces out there. And now Samsung's just changed the game so much that even the type of target audience is different. Samsung likes to make refinement models after certain innovation models because, as usual, I would make videos like this to tell you like, yes, new design, new specs, and new price. But right now, what's new about it is just very mild, and in terms of the physical aspects of it, it's almost indistinguishable from the S24 Ultra. And yes, I get it, we have thicker camera rings to protect the camera sensors, and the edges are more boxy to give you a more confident feel on top of a lighter weight and stronger durability. I mean, you've got the latest Corning Gorilla Glass front and back. Yes, that's their due diligence of at least giving you some differences compared to the previous generation. And I think in the physical aspect of things, that's pretty much it. And of course, the screen has less bezels and a slightly bigger screen size compared to the previous generation because of that. So now it's a 6.9-inch dynamic 2x AMOLED with a variable refresh rate of up to 120 Hz, which is pretty much the same type of display tech from the S24 Ultra. And everything has leading lines when it comes to explaining to you a phone like this. So Snapdragon 8 Elite for Galaxy, which is their own tuned chipset that's clocked a little bit higher compared to other people's Snapdragon 8 Elites. Apart from the clock rate, it gets a really big boost on an NPU level to perform AI tasks more efficiently and faster. And that's pretty much what it's all about now, AI. It's using the latest One UI 7 based on Android 15. Don't worry, you still get your 7 years of updates, which means that the previous generation S24 Ultra is also going to be getting the out-of-the-box updates on their devices eventually. And if you actually did come in from an S24 Ultra, you are going to be very familiar with the AI-centric features that you've been enjoying. You still get your notes summarized by AI. You still get photo assist to help you clean up pictures and get rid of unwanted subjects in your photos. AI interpretation so that you can talk to other people in different languages in real time. The new feature now is the Now Brief and cross-app actions. So Now Brief is essentially an AI curated dashboard that you have even from your lock screen to get you into a briefing section that will tell you a lot of things that the phone feels is very important for the user to know. This time around, it's going to be learning more and more about you on an habitual level so that it can start curating the right apps and activities to appear on your brief, as well as any other interests that you might have, such as, you wanted to watch last night's football game and you were just too tired to do so and you just went to sleep. And it will still push out yesterday's game with the scores on your brief, which is, I guess, particularly useful to some people. And of course, don't forget your calendars are very important. Now, more than ever, Samsung phones require the type of user that would give a lot of input to it. So if you're going to be diligently using your Samsung calendar, your Galaxy Watch, and tying it up with the whole health ecosystem, you're going to be enjoying your brief even more because your health metrics are going to start appearing on your brief, telling you how well you slept and just how much energy you have left to give you like, a little RPG game character stat situation going on. And of course, after that, your calendar day so that, you can see all your scheduled appointments. It will be as though you have your personal assistant coming to your bedroom in the morning and giving you the whole rundown of how you are and what you'll be doing for the rest of the day. So that's all well, nice and useful. And that leads on to the next one, which would be cross-app actions, because this affects how we use our AI assistant on a voice level. As you know, Bixby has always been a big thing for AI when it comes to Samsung, and with this very open partnership with Google, that Bixby is now further integrated with Gemini, and as fast as pushing and holding a power button instead of calling it out through voice, you're able to talk to Gemini directly and issue it instructions to perform a specific task. So cross-app actions works together with a natural language model. So this means you can have, typically a natural conversation with your AI and instruct it to do specific things across specific apps. Well, if you wanted like a hands-free, typing-free solution of telling and sending to your friend a specific location to meet up at for an appointment, you can ask your phone to dig up the location on Google Maps and have it sent to your friend by telling their name on WhatsApp. It's still at a very limited capacity. It's still a work in progress, and I believe that it's something that Samsung will be diligently working on because it is a major selling point to the entire S25 series. I mean, if we're really going to be talking about AI, that is pretty much on the forefront right now, because if you're aiming for natural language and speech compared to contextual where it picks up certain keywords, that is really the right move. You're going to be talking to your phone as if you're talking to a person. Now that we got the AI bits out of the way, the rest of the bits that make it still a smartphone is pretty solid in terms of experience. One UI 7 is incredibly smooth, the aesthetics are there, and it's way more simpler now. I like these rounded pill shapes that are all over the place, and the icons are just like given like a bath in contrast to give it more nice color and cohesion in terms of a design language. And the S Pen, guys, I get it. The S Pen, no more Bluetooth, which means no more remote shutter, no more air gestures. I believe Samsung is going to sell you an S Pen that will support those features later on, so that's not really too big of an issue unless we're just bickering about value and price. It's still the same flagship smartphone that you remember throughout the years, with a still just as effective S Pen for note-taking and doodling. If you indeed miss those gestures, I completely understand. And that leads up to a second point where, you know, this model was not created to replace your S24 Ultra. It is for people who just want to jump into the latest Samsung device and enjoy all of its AI glory. So if you're on the S24 Ultra, this was clearly not made for you. Many people loved it. The battery life was great and the performance was there. The cameras were great too. So there is no reason for you to just switch your phones every year at that capacity unless this year was indeed another innovation model. But like I said, this is a refinement model. So other aspects such as gaming, you're absolutely going to be fine. There's a 40% larger vapor chamber on this thing. It's going to be taking heat a lot better compared to the S24 Ultra. And in terms of performance, yes, there are performance gains to be had on paper, but it doesn't truly translate to real life performance. It's not like your 60 FPS game is going to go 70 FPS now. It's just going to be more stable in terms of sustained gameplay. So it's not going to throttle, it's perceived to not throttle games as fast as the previous generation. So for me, I play just Monster Hunter now and Zenless Zone Zero. I'm able to have the liberty to max out those graphic settings and enjoy high refresh rate gaming. And of course, actual games that support 120Hz is still a very limited list, and it's not just about the phone's hardware, it's about the developer giving that support. So other games such as Riptide and most other games on Play Pass that do support 120Hz, yeah, you definitely can run those, and they run pretty smooth. As I mentioned Riptide before, that's particularly smooth as well. And in terms of longevity, it's still the same 5000 milliamp battery with up to 45 watts of charging. You're going to be getting 7 to 9 hours of screen on time, which is respectable for heavy users, and it still takes about slightly over an hour to fully charge this thing. And for your other specs, it's still the same 12 gigs of RAM and up to 1 terabyte of storage. That's not a lot to be said. Samsung is also a staunch believer in 12 gig RAM as a permanent, which I'm not sure why, and I also guess it has something to do with costing as well. 16 gig of RAM now is overkill, and for Android, yeah, you don't really need 16 gigs. 12 gigs is actually still a pretty good spot to be in, and well, with this phone existing, it's making a stronger case for that. As for the camera systems are still pretty similar compared to the S24 Ultra, with the exception of the ultra wide. Now you get a 50 megapixel ultra wide sensor, which gives improvements on a macro front and of course general ultra wide shots that you particularly take. With that higher pixel count, expect to see better and sharper images. But as for everything else, I would say that as a generalist camera phone, I would say that things are a lot better, and I was impressed because it's just the same specs, right? It has everything to do with the chipset and its ISP and how the AI decides to clean up those images in post. The biggest change for me is the color rendition. Samsung cameras throughout the years like to bump saturation by a lot and over sharpen images in post, but I just don't see it here. I see that the colors are more natural, different shades are more prominently noticed immediately straight out of camera, and it's not aggressively sharpened. And I would say there is now a very thin veil of softness that is quite aesthetic when you're taking certain shots. And I particularly like portrait mode because it has that nice natural tone and the level of sharpness that I can accept, and of course the same veil of softness that gives it a more camera-esque feel, because Samsung isn't particularly trying to get into the who's the sharpest camera contest, because sharpness isn't everything, and too much of it leads to very unrealistic images that just really looks downright fake. So Samsung, this is a great direction that you're heading to, that the AI is able to clean up nicely and not do anything to manipulate images to unrealistic proportions. I appreciate that. And even on a zoom level, so you got a periscope and your telephoto, so you get up to 5 times of optical zoom, and these are always nice and sharp, nice and well defined and lossless. Beyond that, Samsung always deploys space zoom, where you can go beyond 30 times all the way up to 100 times to clean up images. And I can still say that they're still keeping up with the game and images still look pretty nice and well defined. Just know that, you know, you should have a certain level of distance from your target building or target subject from that distance, not to be too far. You're not going to be taking extremely nice, well-defined shots from, like, you know, 50 kilometers away. The ideal distance for me using space zoom is still about what? Less than 5 kilometers, and, you know, less, and even less than that. If you need to take nice defined photos from that point, less than 5 kilometers away, your target, you're gonna have a good time. But if you're gonna go beyond that, it's just going to result in this watercolored, over smoothened image from a great distance, and that's not exactly great. You need to know how to use these things, guys. Conclusively, the audience that this phone would actually appeal to are people who live a corporate life, or somebody who strives to be extremely productive, because this phone will only work if you work. You need to provide it a level of input, invest into being organized into Samsung Calendar, getting into the ecosystem, and when everything just ties together, you will be running really smooth like a machine. Your brief will finally be populated with data such as your calendar and your health metrics and your interests, rather than just showing the weather because you don't even touch the calendar at all. You have to use the calendar. That is something that is really society shaping, because in my market in Malaysia, not a lot of people are using AI on that level. So this phone and every other model in the series is aiming to shape society into adopting that as a life choice. Thank you guys for watching. I'm Zen the Geek, and I'll see you guys in the next video.